119 goals just walked out of Barcelona for free. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The club didn't lose him, didn't get outbid, didn't fumble a contract. They let Robert Lewandowski leave on purpose. A striker who scored 119 times in 191 games, 3 league titles in 4 years, gone on a free transfer by design. Now, normally that's where a story like this ends. Club loses its goal scorer, panic sets in, the decline begins, except this one runs the other way. Because for the first time since Lionel Messi walked out of that same building in tears, Barcelona can actually spend money again, real money, around 100 million euros sitting there, ready to go on a brand new number 9. So the void is real, the freedom is real, the budget is real. There's just one problem, and it is the entire story. The striker Barcelona actually want is the one striker on the planet they cannot get, and the ones they can get, every single name on the list arrives with a question mark stapled to it. Let me start with what's actually leaving, because the number undersells it. Lewandowski didn't drift out of relevance. He scored 82 Liga goals in his Barcelona career. He was the spearhead of a side that just won La Liga, and on his way out he posted 4 words that tell you everything about how clean this break was. The mission is complete. 37 years old, turning 38 in August, and he's not retiring. The strongest signal of where he lands is Major League Soccer. Chicago Fire have offered a 2-year deal with an option for a third, and he flew out to see the project in person. That isn't confirmed yet. There's still noise around Saudi Arabia and a Serie A return, but Chicago is the move everything is pointing toward. Either way, the relevant fact for Barcelona is simpler. The man who carried their line for 4 seasons is gone, and somebody has to replace 40 goals a season. Here's where most people expect the financial horror story, because that's been Barcelona's reality for years. And this is the turn. For the first time in a long time, the horror story is over. And to understand why that matters, you need one piece of vocabulary. La Liga runs something called the 1-to-1 rule. In plain terms, for every single euro Barcelona save or raise, they're allowed to spend exactly €1 on new wages and signings, not 1 in 4 like the stricter version they were buried under before, 1 for 1. And the reason they're suddenly back on the right side of that line is almost poetic. A big chunk of it is Lewandowski himself. Think about it. He was earning a gross salary in the region of 24 million euros a year. The moment his contract expires, roughly 40 million in wage room opens up across the squad. Add the 70-odd million La Liga's auditor has now signed off from the new VIP boxes at the Camp Nou. Add the income coming from the stadium's new tier, and a club that spent 5 years doing financial gymnastics just to register players is, in La Liga's own words, expected to operate normally again. The man leaving for free is part of what funds the man arriving for 100 million. That's the paradox sitting underneath this whole window, and you only understand how big a deal that freedom is when you remember what the restriction actually cost them. This is the club that couldn't register Dani Olmo in time at the start of a season. A player they had already paid 60 million for sat ineligible, missing matches, while the front office scrambled to make the numbers add up. This is the club whose money problems spooked Nico Williams so badly that he turned down a move and signed a 10-year contract with Athletic instead, worried he'd arrive and not even be allowed to play in a World Cup year. And underneath all of it, the wound that never fully closed, Barcelona could not renew Lionel Messi and watch the greatest player in their history leave for nothing because the salaries simply would not fit. So when La Liga now says Barcelona can operate normally again, that is not a footnote, that is the cage door opening. And if you want proof, the freedom is real and not just optimism, it's already happened. Barcelona's first signing of the summer is Anthony Gordon, brought in from Newcastle for around £70 million on a contract until 2031. A year ago, that deal would have triggered another registration crisis. This year it went through. So the spending power isn't a rumor, it's on the pitch, and there's a financial detail worth 30 seconds because it's part of why losing Lewandowski helped rather than hurts. And it isn't only the wages. When a club signs a player for a big fee, that fee doesn't hit the books all at once. It gets spread out across the years of his contract as an annual cost. That's called amortization. A veteran leaving on a free carries none of it. So waving goodbye to a high-salary 37-year-old and replacing him with a signing whose fee is stretched across future seasons is on the balance sheet exactly the kind of move that keeps a club inside the 1-to-1 line. And the timing tells you how ready Barcelona are to spend that freedom. Reports in Spain say that less than 24 hours after the Gordon deal was wrapped up, the club was already preparing an official bid for the striker, sitting right at the very top top of their list. And that striker, the one at the top of the list, is exactly where the freedom slams into a wall, because the obvious move with 100 million in your pocket and a number 9 to replace is to go and buy the best one you can. And Barcelona know exactly who that is. President Joan Laporta, by every report out of Spain, is still dreaming of one name above all others: Julián Álvarez. The profile fits everything Hansi Flick's pressing system wants: mobile, relentless, lethal, and only 25, which is the part that separates him from a 37-year-old stopgap. He's not a replacement for Lewandowski. He's a decade-long answer, and he is almost certainly impossible. Here's the wall. Alvarez is at Atlético Madrid, and Atlético are reported to want north of 150 million euros for him, more than Barcelona's entire striker budget. But the money is only half the problem. The other half is that Atlético have no interest, none, in handing a generational forward to a direct domestic rival. So even if Barcelona somehow stretched to the fee, they'd be negotiating with a club whose strongest instinct is to say no. Freedom to spend doesn't help you when the seller would rather keep the player than take your cash. That's the trap in one sentence. The thing Barcelona can finally afford to chase is the one thing the market won't sell them. So Deco, the sporting director, has built a short list, reportedly 8 names deep, and this is where it gets genuinely revealing, because the list is a map of Barcelona's exact dilemma. Look at the proven end of it. Harry Kane is on there, and on paper he's perfect, an elite guaranteed goal scorer in the exact mold of Lewandowski. The problem is the reverse of the Alvarez one. Kane has shown no desire to leave Bayern, where he's been scoring at an absurd rate. Available, but not interested. Then there's the experienced tier. Names like Lautaro Martinez and Victor Osimhen, both ruthless finishers, both carrying their own obstacles, whether it's an astronomical fee or internal questions inside the building about how cleanly they'd fit Flick's system. Pure quality, complicated price. There's a younger Premier League option floating in there too, with Chelsea's João Pedro reportedly linked, more attainable than the Galacticos, but without the proven, bankable goal tally that makes a Kane or an Alvarez so tempting in the first place. And then, right at the affordable end, sits the name that explains everything: Julian Vlahović. On paper, the easiest deal of the entire list, a striker whose contract is running down, available cheaply, maybe even for nothing, a 25-year-old who'd cost a fraction of Alvarez. So why isn't this already done? Because, according to reports out of Spain, the sporting department itself has raised questions about how he'd fit the tactical system and about his on-pitch temperament. Read the list top to bottom, and the shape is almost cruel. The more Barcelona want a striker, the less they can get him. The more easily they can get one, the more doubts come attached. Money solved one problem and revealed a deeper one. Wanting and affording almost never line up. Now here's the part that turns this from a transfer story into something bigger. Because if it were just about replacing goals, you'd shrug, sign the cheapest competent option, and move on. It isn't just about goals. It's about the 18-year-old this entire club is now built around and what he's reportedly asked for. Lamine Yamal is, by a distance, Barcelona's most valuable asset. This is a player they extended until 2031. A player they protected with a 1 billion euro release clause. A player they once turned down 250 million euros for from Paris Saint-Germain when he was 17. Laporta confirmed that offer himself, and Barcelona, drowning in debt at the time, still said no. That tells you how untouchable he is, and the interest in him has never really gone away. Paris Saint-Germain shall be the same club that put that $250 million on the table, are widely reported to be ready to come back down the line with something even bigger, and their thinking is patient and a little ruthless. Every season, Barcelona finish short of the very top, the harder it becomes to keep a player of his level fully satisfied, which is precisely why Yamal reportedly wants this summer carries so much weight. And now, according to reports in Spain, Yamal has asked the club for one thing this summer: a top-level striker. He reportedly sees it as the single biggest gap that needs fixing. That's a player making clear that a cheap, safe number 9 isn't the point. So, weigh both sides honestly, because this is a genuine fork and not a verdict. On one path, Barcelona chase the dream. They push for an Alvarez or a Kane. They signal to Yamal and to the football world that they're a club with ambition again, and they risk draining the very finances they just repaired. On the other, they play it safe, that they take the cheap available option, they protect the balance sheet they fought so hard to fix, and they accept that the ceiling of their attack might fall short of what their crown jewel is asking for. Spend to satisfy the star, or save to satisfy the auditor. There isn't an obviously correct answer, there's only definitely a bet. And by the way, if you're into this kind of breakdown where the transfer is really a window into how a club thinks, that's the whole point of this channel. So hit subscribe. There's a lot more of it coming through the World Cup and the window, because that's the real story here, and it's why this is so much more than a name on a short list. Step back and look at the full picture. 119 goals just walked out of Barcelona for free, and for the first time in years, the club had the money to replace them. The freedom they spent half a decade clawing it back finally arrived. The budget is there, the shortlist is drawn, and the one striker who would make all of it make sense, the young, perfect, decade-long answer, is the one Atletico will not sell at any price Barcelona can reach. The money came back the exact summer Barcelona needed it most. The question that's going to define their whole season is whether, even now, even free to spend again, it's actually enough.